Welcome to the Ultimate Dental Podcast, the place where you can learn how to create a dental practice and a business life that you love. Listen in with Dr. David Moffet as he interviews successful entrepreneurs and successful business people and successful dentists as they share their business successes, their stories, and their breakthrough ideas. Sharing pearls of wisdom that you can take back to your practice and implement immediately so that you can have that great practice with more patients, higher profits, and less stress. This is the podcast where great dental practices meet with successful business processes. Thanks for tuning in to the Ultimate Dental Podcast, the podcast where thought leaders, industry experts, and thriving practice owners reveal their very best tips, tools, and strategies that will help you to grow your dental practice faster. Now, here's your host, Dr. David Moffet.
Hi everybody, and welcome to today's episode of the Ultimate Dental Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. David Moffet. It is Monday morning in Burrowang, New South Wales in Australia, and I have the pleasure today of talking with David Harris, who is in Halifax in Nova Scotia in Canada, in North America. There you go. And he is Sunday evening his time. David, nice to catch up with you. You and I have known each other for coming on to up to 13 years, I think. I think we met in 2012, and we've even done some business together. You've been down here to Australia to give me some assistance, I think in 2014. But anyway, David Harris, welcome to the Ultimate Dental Podcast.
So good to be with you, David, and good to catch up.
Yeah, it's lovely to hear your voice and to be talking with you face to face. And before we went live, we worked out that we actually haven't seen each other and spoken since 2018. We used to meet annually at a speakers meeting, but due to COVID, basically, I haven't been to the US to catch up, and fortunately, the fraudsters haven't been in my neck of the woods down here to invite you back down. But David, you are a dental fraud investigator and one of the best, and that's why I hired you to come and look for some details in somebody who stole in my practice, but they actually stole from the government, but indirectly they stole from the dentists who are working for me because those dentists didn't get the work. But that was a long story short. But David, tell us how did you end up in going from being at school to end up being a dental fraud investigator? Tell us how the pathway that led you from school to there, because it is a very interesting story.
It wasn't a linear one. It started when the call came from my high school's principal to my parents. And the basic theme of the call was that it was time for David and the school to stop wasting each other's time. So at the tender age of 15, I was on the loose. And you probably know this, David, but 15-year-olds with time on their hands don't use it well. And I was no exception to that principle. And I started getting in some trouble with the law, and pretty soon the police were showing up at my parents' house pretty regularly. And eventually I got put in front of a judge. This was 1977, to give you the chronology. And the judge looked me up and down and said, "Green or orange?" And I said, "Your Honor, I don't understand." So he clarified, "Mr. Harris, I am giving you a choice of what you can wear next week." And the light bulb came on in my head that orange is the color of prison and green is the color of the Army. So after thinking about it for probably all of a tenth of a second, I said, "Green, please." And the next morning I went down to the recruiting center and enlisted. And again, 1977, right after the Vietnam War, military in every country was having trouble meeting its recruiting quotas. So they were, I'll say, a little bit flexible, and they ignored some things like the fact that I was a couple of years underage. And away I went. And my first couple of months in uniform were undistinguished. I basically was continuing my previous pattern of just doing the minimum to get by, and I was starting to get in a little bit of trouble. And then I had the epiphany. And the epiphany was that military prison is a lot worse and stricter than civilian prison. And the whole reason I'm here in the first place is because I didn't want to go to civilian prison. Time to clean up your act. And with that mental flick of the switch, I turned things around. I became a model soldier. I got promoted quickly. Fairly soon, the military decided it was also short of commissioned officers, and the call came down to see who was in the ranks, who they could promote to officer status, and I got snared in that net. And next thing I know, I'm what you'd call in Australia a second lieutenant. And sometime after that, the fact that I had neither a university degree nor a high school diploma became an issue, and they sent me away to college. So I had a taxpayer-funded education. Once my military enlistment was up, I grew my hair long like it is now. I became a civilian. I went to work for a bank. I didn't last very long. The bank that I worked with just insisted on making the same mistakes over and over. And I quit my job with the bank in 1989, and I moved back to my hometown. And I'd been there about 2 weeks, and I was bored silly. I was just climbing the walls. This was the middle of summer. There was nothing good on television. There was no such thing as Netflix. I was really at my wit's end. And the phone rang, and it was somebody I'd been in high school with in my short stay there, who was now a dentist. And he said, "I think my front desk person's stealing from me, and David, I have no one else to call." Timing was perfect. I was so happy for the diversion. So I said to my friend, "No problem. I'll meet you tonight at your practice after it closes, and we'll get to the bottom of what's going on." So I went to his practice that night. Now, this was 1989 BC, in other words, before computers. So in those days, practices used to use this manual system called pegboard. And the way pegboard worked was that each individual patient had a 8.5 by 11 card that kept track of all their transactions and how much money they owed. And they used to keep these cards in a tray. So I got into the practice, and my friend shoved the tray of cards at me. And I said to him, "I think we're going to solve this a little different way. Show me where the person you suspect works. Take me to her workspace." So my friend took me over to her desk, and I started going through it. And now my friend was going kind of bug-eyed, like, "Are you going to get me in trouble? Are you allowed to do this?" And I had to explain to him that it's not actually her desk, it's your desk. She just works there. What I found, David, taped under one of her drawers was what we call in the vernacular her cheat book.
Ooh.
So thieves need to keep track sometimes of what they've done so they know what's real and what's fiction in your accounts. And these days, it's more likely to be an Excel spreadsheet, but in 1989, it was a notebook. And I found her notebook. And the whole thing unraveled pretty quickly after that. A couple of hours later, I had a pretty solid picture of what she had done. The amount stolen was about $35,000, which was significant then. I mean, it wouldn't be now. And my friend wasn't happy to find out that he had been stolen from, but he was appreciative. And he asked me for one more favor. He said, "Can you come back tomorrow morning, because I'm going to fire her, and I'd rather not do that alone." And I thought, okay, I'll probably be bored tomorrow as well, so sure, I'll come back. So I came back the next morning. We fired her. It was over and done within about 10 minutes. My friend promised to buy me dinner that I'm still waiting for.
That's a dentist.
And that's a dentist. And I kind of shrugged my shoulders and walked away. And I thought it was interesting, but I didn't really see a career path for me. 2 weeks later, lightning struck. And what happened was I had an appointment at my own dentist's office. And you can imagine the jolt of lightning I got. I had my hand on the front door and I was about to go in. And I looked through the glass panel in the front door, and what I saw sitting at his front desk was the same woman I fired 2 weeks ago.
Oh.
What I said next, I will not repeat. As I turned around, hoping she didn't see me, and I sprinted to a payphone because in 1989 I didn't have a cell phone.
No.
And I called the practice and used a little bit of deception to get past her and talk to the doctor. And I explained to him about the time bomb that was ticking at his front desk, and he panicked and hired me. And that was my first client. And by the time I finished his work, the local Henry Schein rep realized what I was doing. And he had a couple of other clients that had concerns. And pretty soon, without any planning whatsoever, I was in business.
Fantastic.
So it's not the textbook version of how one starts a business, but it worked out okay. And now, 35 years later, my company's grown a lot. We now have 25 people, and we do hundreds of embezzlement investigations each year. We also work proactively with practice owners to put the controls in place that will protect them. But some things haven't changed, like the rush that you get when the pieces fall into place and you see what's happening. And every one of my investigators will tell you that's one of the highlights of their job.
So, David, you did some work for me back in 2014. Is it the same in 2025? Is it the same sort of thing being done by fraudsters? And so you identify signs and you say, all right, they're going to be doing this or they're going to be doing that. Or are you sometimes surprised that you actually stumble on something that leads you to a different type of fraud that you've not seen before?
The majority of time, what we see is something we've already seen before. And that's just a function, David, of having done thousands of these. But about every 3 to 6 months, we will stumble across some new wrinkle that, something that we have just never seen before. One of the things we do internally is we call them spitball sessions. I sit with a group of my senior people and we try to invent ways to steal. And with some regularity, after we do that, we see that pattern, which just tells me that other people are doing the same thing we're doing, of kind of actively looking at a practice they're working in and trying to find a way to steal. The basics haven't changed. And fundamentally in a dental practice, there are 2 ways to steal. And which one of them I'm going to pick depends on the kind of oversight that I have. And I'm thinking that everyone in your audience uses practice management software. And practice management software tracks a number of things. One of the things it tracks is patient payments. In other words, how much money patients have paid. There are 2 kinds of practice owners. There are those who get a report from their practice management software and compare it to what went into their bank. And then there's the other 85%.
Oh, really? 85% don't?
That's right. And if you are in that 85% and I work for you and I want to steal from you, you've made it incredibly easy, because what you have allowed me to do is to record payments in your software and just not deposit the money. In other words, all the amounts patients pay, I will record, and then I just divert some of the deposit. And traditionally, cash was the thing that people stole. That's probably not the case anymore. We certainly still see cash theft, but we also see theft of checks, theft of credit card payments. I don't know what the Australian term is for this. In the United States, they're called EFT, electronic funds transfer payments. So this is when an insurance company puts money into directly into a doctor's bank account. So any of those incoming forms of funds could be stolen. So if I'm a thief, as I say, the first question is, does my doctor do the collections versus deposits comparison? And if the answer is no, then there's a very simple way of stealing that doesn't require a whole lot of creativity or intellect to pull off. If I'm dealing with a doctor who does do that comparison, I can still steal, but now I have to do something a little bit more challenging. What I have to do is find a way to make the doctor's practice management software lie about collections. So if I can trick your software into underreporting how much patients paid, the difference, the amount that's underreported, becomes stealable. And for obvious reasons, because I'm sure if I were listening in the audience right now, I would want to know how that's done. I'm not going to get into that. Simply to protect practice owners, but I'll say to the doctors in the audience, if you have questions or you want more information, feel free to contact me and we can have a one-on-one discussion. But I know that somewhere there's an embezzler watching this with interest, and I'm not going to educate them.
So, David, the embezzler at my practice was fairly easy to detect for me because I knew how much I was paying her and her lifestyle choices, the clothes that she wore, the dogs, the cars, didn't add up to what I was paying her. They added up to way more, and so I just had to work out how she was stealing. And as I said, she wasn't stealing from my practice, but she'd worked out a way to steal from the government. And use my practice as a vehicle to do that, which was embarrassing. But as a result of that perception, she did roll over when the government came a-calling, and she got a 3-year holiday in Her Majesty's prison as a result. So the interesting part about that story in the first stages was that when I started talking to my wife about this, who worked in the practice, and she said, "Oh, it can't be. You're just imagining these things, this difference." But I picked up on nothing. Money wasn't a problem for her. If something, if she scratched the rims of her car, new rims, I think, gee, they're not cheap to replace. Most people never replace rims. It's a lesson learned scratching them. But no, she had new rims, and so it was. But it wasn't until the government investigators came in and said, "You don't have a problem. You've got a big problem in your practice," that we then had to work with them for a while they gathered their evidence before they actually did the arrest. So, are those telltale signs still there? Are thieves still poor in covering their tracks? I always look at dental practices and see if the receptionist's driving a better car than the dentist. I've got a question mark.
Almost every thief exhibits some behaviors of stealing. And you mentioned living beyond her means, and that's a common thing that's observed. There are lots of others. One thing we know about thieves is that they like to do their stealing when nobody else is in the practice. So they'll show up before everybody else, or they'll stay after everybody's gone home, or they'll kind of quietly visit the office on weekends. They want alone time when they steal. Thieves are also pretty territorial. They're very possessive about their duties, and it might even extend to their workspace or their computer. This could be the person who gets upset because they're at lunch and somebody needs a workstation and the only one available is the thief's, and somebody else borrows it. Of course, they don't want to cross-train anybody to do any part of their job, because the tighter they hold the knowledge about how to do their job, the more successful they're going to be as a thief. They don't like outside advisors. They know they can fool their dentist, or at least they're confident they can fool their dentist. But when a dentist says to their staff, "Great news! I'm going to bring in a consultant. They'll be able to help us work through some problems that we haven't been able to solve on our own." And one staff member is really visibly unhappy about that. You have to ask why.
Yeah, I'm just running through some of my clients' staff in my head at the moment, just because that's often the case. And it's not the case that we want them to work harder. That's obviously an objection. They're comfortable in their role, but you're right. They don't want to. They don't want to be caught if they're got their fingers in the cash register.
And for a lot of dentists, particularly their office manager, is the person who makes their life easier and gives them the freedom to focus on dentistry. And that sometimes creates a loyalty or a lack of questioning of that person's integrity. And when a consultant comes in, they're not under the thief's spell in the same way the doctor is. So that presents a danger. And then the other thing is that consultants tend to view dentistry as a business first and a healing art second, whereas for a lot of practice owners, those two things take the opposite importance. In other words, I'm a healer first and a somewhat reluctant business person.
That's the disappointment I find as a coach and consultant, is the opportunity of having a successful business is held back by, well, I'm a good dentist. That's all I want, as opposed to what you can achieve, what's in your hands, and what you can grow to provide a better life for you, your family, your children, your retirement. If you ask any dental patient, would they like the procedure done in 4 hours or 2, they would all say, just do it in 2. They wouldn't even ask if it was cheaper to do it in 2. They'd say, just get it over, do it in 2. But in terms of earning an income to retire, if you can do that in 20 years instead of 30, why wouldn't you do that? Because you don't know how many years are left after that 20 either, or that 30.
And communication is so key as well. And I remember how you built a very successful practice in really a blue collar area. And I think what distinguished you from your peers was your ability to talk to patients. And to me, that's the other important thing. But nobody really warns most dentists of these things while they're in school. The focus is on doing good clinical work, which still has to happen. But most patients have no idea how good their dentist is. What they really know is, does this person see me on time? Do they explain what I need in a way I can understand? Things like that.
Yeah, and the other thing, David, getting back to the team members stealing, they are also the masters of disguise with the patients too. Some patients talk very highly about, oh, what a wonderful employee that person was, and even if they were just a thief of time, they were lazy bones. They weren't actually the best for the practice, and so getting people to realise, as you described in that description of the possessive employee of their space, some people get very comfortable with how they can get by doing bare minimum. Now I'm going back to your schooling days, but that's and so how do we flick the switch? How did you flick the switch? Because when you were telling that story and you were in the military and they said, well, you're going to have to go back to school and do your high school diploma and then a university course. How did you accept that after you had avoided it? You'd gone through a life of avoiding study. How did you accept that change?
Well, to be clear, they didn't send me back to high school. I went right to university without the benefit of a high school diploma or finishing high school. So I had a little catch up to do. How did I accept it? Well, I was a different person then than I was 3 years ago, and the problem I had in high school was I just couldn't see the point of it. And I remember my last class, the last high school class I ever went to was history. And we were studying ancient Greek history. And the question that broke the camel's back was, I asked the history teacher, why are we doing this? You know, it's 3,000 years in the past. I can't change any of it. What's the point? And she gave me the high school history teacher answer, well, it'll help you predict the future. To which I said, can you show me an example of that? Like, tell me something that's going to happen next week based on what you know about Greek history. And she said, well, I can't do that. And suddenly it seemed pointless. The second time when I was sent back to school, first of all, now I was being paid to do it, so that made it a little more palatable. And second, I saw a purpose. And I had more control over what I chose to study, and I studied something that interested me and I found relevant, and it went much better.
Did you find the answer to the Greek history question, predicting the future, or is that still one of life's mysteries?
I would say that my quest for that answer has not been satisfied.
Interesting. My mother was a history teacher, and as a result, my sister also studied a lot of history. I wasn't so keen on history at school, more geography and language, though the language didn't help me at school. But anyway, getting back to the thieves, people steal for two reasons, I think, and one is need, and the other is just purely opportunity.
Greed, exactly.
Yeah. The thief in my practice, when the police went to her home, they said it was as if they'd encountered a shoplifter, because there was rooms of clothes purchased but still with labels on, never worn. And so the ceremony of being loaded with cash and being able to go shopping on her day off, so less other shoppers, so more attention to her. Here's X, ready, what are you going to buy this week? She was the celebrity shopper. And so there was that mental pleasure that she was getting from that recognition, at the expense of the taxpayer, because when you steal from the government, you're basically stealing from all of us. Nobody likes paying any more tax than they need to. And if somebody's stealing from the government, well, the government's got to get the money from someone else. So that was opportunity more. Well, I think it came about from opportunity. She realised that she was entitled to some free dental work, or government paid dental work because of a medical condition. And then when she ticked that box, she got the money rather than the dental work. And then she worked out, well, I can just propagate this with everybody I know. And then every patient that comes in, I can tell them to go away. And she was accessing their credits and getting the money paid into her bank account, which was horrific to think, because, that work, one, those patients didn't get the work done. And two, that work should have been done by my dentist to get money for them. So she stole from a number of people, and not just the government. And so I had I bore no remorse in turning her in, because I don't mind people who work hard, but people who shortcut at other people's expenses, rules are rules.
Absolutely. And greedy thieves feel like society isn't rewarding them properly for their significant talents. They feel like they're underappreciated by society, and they do things that they feel will elevate their status. Maybe a little bit of a narcissistic tendency, if you want to try and express it in those terms. And it sounds like what your thief did was she wanted, when she went into a shop somewhere, to be recognized and to be treated as kind of one of their elite customers. And if that meant buying things that she never got around to wearing, well, that's the cost of being, I think you called her a minute ago, a celebrity shopper.
Yeah. I think that was she needed that recognition, and I think may also have been something to do in her personal relationship as well. That she was able to provide for a partner that wasn't pulling his share of the household needs in terms of providing an income. But David, one of the things, and I don't know whether it was you that told me this, that in a dental practice, the number one thief is often the wife working in the practice. Are you finding that still, or is that just an urban myth?
No, it's real. It happens in a specific fact set, David, and let's assume that you're still a practice owner, and your spouse hasn't told you this yet, but she's planning on trading you in on a newer model. And for the benefit of the audience, I know David's spouse, and she is wonderful. So this is a very hypothetical scenario. But if your spouse is planning a divorce and just hasn't told you that yet, the one thing that they're probably going to do is go to a solicitor or a lawyer somewhere and consult them about what their situation would be on a divorce. And what the lawyer is going to point out to them is that okay, you're on your husband's payroll, or you're on your wife's payroll. When you drop the divorce bomb, the first thing they're going to do is fire you. And now, until income sharing arrangements are worked out, you're going to have no money coming in, and you need money under the mattress to provide for that. So I'm not going to tell you how to do it, but I'm going to tell you that you probably need $60,000 or $80,000 of liquidity when you drop the bomb on your dentist spouse. And in that situation, if the spouse works in the office and typically has no oversight from the doctor, I mean, oversight is what you do for people you don't trust, and you assume when you're married to somebody that your interest in theirs are parallel. So we have had a number of cases where I've had to tell the dentist, yeah, you need a divorce lawyer. And interestingly, we have one case where we saved a marriage.
Oh, really?
The doctor's wife called us, and she said she did not work in the practice. She said, my husband is gone all the time, and he's working a lot of hours, and we have no money. And I have two hypotheses. The first one is that he's having an affair with somebody, and he's got them set up in an apartment and whatever. And the second hypothesis is that his office manager is stealing from him. So I need you to tell me which one it is. And we investigated, and we found that the office manager had stolen $260,000.
Oh.
This woman, David, was the happiest embezzlement victim we've ever had. It's not often that we confirm embezzlement and somebody says, oh, thank God.
Oh, really?
Well, but the alternative was her husband was fooling around.
Oh, right. Oh, sorry. The wife said that, not the.
Yeah. No, the wife was the happiest victim ever because we showed her that her husband was not philandering.
My goodness, but surely she must have taken out a question on his intelligence to have not picked it up himself.
I have a lot of conversations with spouses of dentists and with dentists who blame themselves. And as you know firsthand, thieves can be pretty clever. They can be quite attuned to what the doctor looks at and what they don't.
Mm.
And they can build a theft pattern around the doctor's scrutiny. In the case I'm talking about, where we rescued the marriage, it was, I would say, a fairly adept thief. As it came out in our investigation, she had stolen from other practices previously. This was not her first time through. So she was really good at sizing up her doctor and understanding what the unguarded areas in the practice were, and then going after them.
You raise a good point there, David. Do thieves find a honeypot and then stay, or do they find us? Do they move ahead of being caught? Do they say, "All right, I'm going to be here for 2 years. I'm going to drain this well as much as I can, and then I'm getting out of here before the posse shows up"?
I don't generally see them kind of have that mental clock in their head. If the doctor is acting like the posse is about to show up, then they may make a hasty exit. But I see very few who just say, "Okay, I've been here for 2.5 years. I've probably stolen enough. I should go hit somebody else." They don't think that way. Once they're in the groove and it's working, typically they stay until either there's a very specific reason why they get concerned, or something structural happens that puts them out the door. Their husband gets transferred to a different state or something like that.
All right, so they're of the belief, if I haven't been caught by now, I'm not going to get caught. So
they're of the belief that they're smarter than the doctor, at least in this area.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, very few thieves, yours was maybe anomalous in this way. Very few thieves only have one way to steal. The norm for thieves is 3 different methods. So they might be they might be tampering with the doctor's payroll so that they're overpaid, and they might also be stealing the doctor's revenue in a couple of different ways. That kind of diversification is common. And thieves think about that part of their life the way that you might think about your investment portfolio. I mean, I'm not going to take all my money and put it in Apple stock or Tesla stock, because hypothetically one day Elon could wake up crazy. So I better diversify. And thieves do exactly the same thing.
Yeah, so they're cunning, aren't they?
Sometimes incredibly so. Sometimes they don't have to be terribly smart. And to circle back to something we talked about a few minutes ago, if the doctor doesn't do that collections versus deposits comparison, I don't have to be clever as a thief.
No, of course not. And in fact, I remember a friend of mine telling me back in the book and paper and pen days, that he discovered a thief who was writing the transactions in a ledger and then adding them up, but the totals at the bottom didn't add up to what was in the columns, and the doctor hadn't seen that. He was just looking at the bottom line, and that was what was going into the bank. So that was a very interesting a wake-up call for him about that employee. And I think with that employee, did come across her again. This was an ancient history story that he told about her, and the times when I came across her, she certainly had changed her ways. Tell me, we were discussing before we started the recording about how times have changed since you came down to Australia in 2014 and how they are now, and how because of COVID that the world seemed to go way more cashless, and so as you were saying, the thief who can steal because the doctor doesn't even compare the deposits to the takings to the deposits. The easiest way to steal is just steal the cash. So
or the checks, or credit card payments.
so how has that changed? I asked you the question: is it more difficult for a thief to steal now with everything being so computerized and so everything's there in black and white on the computer? And you said they're finding their ways. So tell me. Obviously, this isn't a lesson for thieves, but tell me, why is the thief so far ahead of technology in terms of still being able to? Why is there still a way for them to do that?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, as technology changes, the thief will understand it and assimilate it and see what opportunities are there long before the doctor will. So technology advances kind of create a knowledge gap, typically. And we've talked a couple of times about the days before computers. You called it the pencil and paper days. And in those days, doctors were able to be pretty hands-on in the sense that what you saw at the end of the day was actual transactions, and you even saw the handwriting, so you knew who entered each transaction into your accounts. We have moved from that to a computerized world where what you see is reports. And by their very nature, reports aren't transactions, they're abstractions of transactions. So as practice is computerized, there became a distance between the doctor and their records. And typically that distance was closed with the assistance of staff. So staff kind of became a filter to the information that probably wasn't there back in the manual days. And then from there, technological advances almost always create opportunities. And one question you'd asked me about before we went on air was, now very few practices use paper charting. The charting is always incorporated into the practice management software. And your hypothesis was, well, that should make it a little harder to steal. And my answer was, well, no, actually, I think it makes it easier. One of the things that we used to be able to do was find discontinuities between paper records and electronic records. So if you're keeping paper charts and somebody goes into your practice management software and changes stuff, now the paper charts won't correlate anymore to the electronic records. On the other hand, now where that's all harmonized, when a thief changes the financial side of the practice management software, typically they will also simultaneously change the clinical side, and you don't have that disharmony anymore. So a basic tool that we used to use back when financial records were electronic and clinical records were paper has gone. And that makes it easier for a thief to steal and get away with it. And if now in practice management software, if they delete the financial side of a certain transaction, they will also typically eradicate the clinical side at the same time. And the doctor's progress notes and everything else just go away with deleting the financial side. So it makes for tidier stealing.
Gotcha. But I guess if the doctor ends up with a questionable result in the treatment, they're going to be found out. But that's not a big risk. Most dentists do good treatment and rarely get complained against. So
and if I'm deleting treatment from your software, it's not going to be something massive. I mean, I'm not going to delete a bridge.
No.
It would be minor stuff that you might not notice later on if you were comparing the chart later on with the patient's mouth.
Hmm. Hmm. Um, Getting back to your firm, you said that you're now a team of 25. That's is that because you've just got the monopoly in dental fraud investigation, or does that mean that there's more fraud happening now, or there's more fraud being discovered now?
Um, we do not have a monopoly. We're the biggest in the world at this, but we have several smaller competitors. So it isn't a monopoly, but yes, there is an incredible amount of dental embezzlement that goes on each year. The best number I could give you, David, in North America is that somewhere between 10 and 12,000 dentists will be victimized every year. The second thing is that I think the one thing that I am proudest about in when I look back over my career is that we have taken something that used to be said in whispers, and made it a mainstream conversation. There was a time when there were no articles on this in dental publications. There was absolutely no record that would even tell a dentist that, you know what, you're vulnerable to this. And one of the first interviews I did, I didn't pick the title, but when the interview was published in a dental publication, the title that my interviewer picked for it was Dentistry's Dirty Little Secret, because nobody was talking about it. And we've worked very hard to make this a conversation, to make dentists aware that they're vulnerable. And I'd like to think that part of the level of activity that we have is because we've helped people to realize that they might have a problem.
Yeah, to me, it was never mentioned in dental school, but it became something fairly obvious fairly quickly that there was opportunity for someone if the dentist had their guard down, I think, more importantly. And dentistry, by its very nature, is a place of opportunity because the dentist basically got his back to the rest of the team. He's focused on an area the size of a tennis ball all day long, and anything can be going on behind. And I found I had radar up. Why is that phone ringing too many times? Why are those people talking when they should be working? Why aren't they talking to patients? And why are they talking to each other? That sort of stuff. So anything that can go on, the bigger the office, the further away the front desk area is from where the clinicians are working, creates opportunity. And then opportunity also comes, David, as you would know, in branch practices. And that's where our opportunity was taken by our thief in administering a branch practice. At the end of the day, I've got to go down and tidy up their government funded claims. Little did we know. So you're right. You'd like to feel that you're smart enough that you can prevent this, but sometimes being big does create opportunity as well. It's a small dentist running on the smell of an oily rag isn't going to be easy to steal from because he knows there's not much coming in and he knows where every penny's going. But when there's excess and largesse and mass production, there is opportunity for sure, and that's the disappointment of being a target.
Absolutely. And even in small practices, what I would gently say is that I know very few dentists who picked dentistry as their career because they wanted to be business owners. Every dentist I ever met, decided probably in high school that they wanted to help people. They wanted to be in a medical field, and dentistry is what they happen to choose. But they're healers first. The book, I've written a couple of books on embezzlement. The most recent one, I actually titled it Healers versus Stealers, because that's kind of the way that I view the battle between dentists and their thieves.
Yeah, that's it. You know, it's I've often been not accused, but people have commented that I have a very polar view on the world. That I hope for the best, but I'm prepared for the worst. Sometimes more than people would even think. They say, well, how do you have that thought? Well, I say, well, that's just an extrapolation of if everything went wrong, that would be what would happen. And so I hope that never does happen, but I'm ready for it if it does. But in terms of dental and stealing, dentists like to think that they're on top of their money coming in, and that they have a practice that is unable to be stolen from. But sadly, when it does happen, are you finding that the dentists where it does happen, they feel like they've got a handle on their money, but they still feel like they've been stolen from? Is that the reaction?
I characterize it a little bit differently. I think the dentists who are stolen from feel like they can blindly trust their staff.
Oh, that bad.
They would never do it to me. I pay them really well. You know, it's that kind of thought process that dentists have. I encounter very few dentists who think that their financial systems are good. They all know that they're not. What they think is that my staff would never do that to me. You know, my staff love me. And it's really that blind spot that gets them caught more than, I think my financial controls are really good.
Fascinating. So they really, it's a naivety.
It is, and you could either one of those would be a naivety. You know, that either I think my systems are better than they are, or I think I'm a better judge of people than I am. The other thing I'll mention is the way that humans, and this is broader than dentists, but the way that humans handle the issue of trust. And what we do when we first meet somebody is we size them up. Can I trust this person? And if you size somebody up and the answer you come up with is, yes, I can trust this person, then you kind of lock that in a closet and never revisit it. And to me, trust has to be a more dynamic concept. In other words, there are people who were worthy of your trust at some earlier time, but they're not anymore. And it's that failure to revisit that gets a lot of people in trouble.
I think it's not just in a dental practice, but in all forms of business transaction. You know, you think that somebody is trustworthy, and then slowly that opinion is eroded, but you ignore the telltale signs until finally you come to a point, which sometimes is horrific, and then you go back and go, well, I should have realised here, and then I should have realised here, and I should have realised here, and so it's buyer beware, or in all sorts of situations, you've really got to have your back up. Since that time, I've been stolen from a couple of times by tradespeople at the farm. It's just stupid on my behalf, and yet I just ignored telltale signs.
Well, hindsight is both exact and cruel.
Oh, very cruel, and I think the thief always feels, well, they've got enough. They don't need, they should be sharing it with me. And I think that's often the situation in a dental practice.
Every thief has to rationalize what they do. I mean, we all know that stealing is wrong. We learned that on the playground when we were 3 years old. from our parents. And every thief has to be able to say to themselves, I know that in general it's wrong to take other people's things, but it's okay in this specific situation because, and then whatever they say after because is the rationalization. And, because the doctor's underpaying me. I mean, he made $1 million last year and he paid me 70,000. That's not fair. And they forget some things. I mean, they forget the time you spent becoming a dentist and staying at the top of your game, and the risk you took when you bought a practice, and all of that gets forgotten. It's just that a lot of thieves look at their dentist as basically a high functioning moron with good hands. And the only reason you're financially successful, Dr. Moffet, is because I keep your chair full, and then when people leave that chair, I collect the money. And if I didn't do those two things, I mean, you could be a great dentist, but you're sitting there looking at your empty chair, or your big list of accounts receivable and wondering why you don't have any money. So they convince themselves that they are at least as integral in your financial success as you are.
Yeah, that sadly is an overinflated opinion of their own importance. But
back to narcissism.
It is something that we have to be grateful of, that we do have good team around us, but with some degree of level-headedness from them, that everybody is replaceable. Even I learned that after I sold my practice and left my practice. Learned that I'd bump into patients and they said, "No, yes." I said, "I'm only another 15 minutes down the road," and they go, "Yeah, but David, I don't really go there that often that way, so I'm just happy to stay at the practice that you left." And you think, "Gee, well, I was their dentist for 20 plus years, and in an instant, I'm a feather duster." Not the rooster anymore. So, and then some of the ones that you don't think would follow you do follow you. So the people do behave differently, and I guess that's what life is about: is being prepared for those times when the ball doesn't bounce the way that we want it to, but making sure that we don't create opportunities unnecessarily for us to be targets of thieves. David, it's been great chatting with you. We've come to the end of our time together, and I appreciate the opportunity of getting back together face to face. It's been great. If anybody wants to get in touch with you, any of our viewers in North America and even in Australia, I know you have Suitcase Will Travel. How do they get in touch with you?
The best way is through our website, which is www.prosperident.com, and they can reach us. There's a contact us page. They can fill in just a quick form, and somebody will get back to them fairly quickly. If you are in North America, you can call us on our toll-free number, which is 888-398-2327. Again, 888-398-2327.
Well, David Harris, pleasure catching up with you. Thank you very much for sharing your wisdom and your insights. And I'm sure that somebody who's watching this is going to say, I need to have another look at how this person's been behaving in my practice, because the numbers are there that I think I don't think you said it here, but every dentist, there's a 50% chance that every dentist will be embezzled from at some time in their practicing lifetime.
The North American number is about 70%. I haven't seen any Australian studies, but I don't think it's all that different.
Yeah. David Harris, thanks very much for joining me today on the Ultimate Dental Podcast.
It was great to be with you, David. Good to catch up.
Thank you for tuning in to another inspiring episode of the Ultimate Dental Podcast. We appreciate each and every one of you for being part of our dental community and joining us each week on this incredible journey. If you found value in today's episode and you don't want to miss out on future episodes packed with expert insights and actionable strategies, here's how you can stay connected with us. Firstly, hit that subscribe button. Whether you're listening on your favourite podcast platform or watching on our website, subscribing ensures you'll never miss an episode. Secondly, share the love. If you know a fellow dentist or colleague who could benefit from the wisdom and knowledge that we share here, please share our podcast with them. Also, please share the podcast on your socials by simply clicking on the social icons wherever you view or listen to this podcast. Together, we can all do our bit to elevate the dental profession. And finally, stay engaged with us. We love hearing from you. Your questions, comments, and feedback fuel our mission to provide the best content for your professional growth, your personal growth, and for your practice growth. Remember, your journey to creating a dental practice and a business life that you love is our mission, and we're excited to be your trusted guide along the way. Thank you for being a part of the Ultimate Dental Podcast. Until next time, keep smiling, keep striving, and keep on tuning in to the Ultimate Dental Podcast.